Rev up your engines!
Matthew Taylor says, what's your opinion on buying a 79 Corvette? How about engine swapping it with an LS engine? Those old Corvettes are fun things to drive around. You don't want to pay too much for them. Most of them, unless they were a specialty item, weren't particularly collector's items or anything. But they're easy to work on, pretty simple. Now, if you want to put an LS engine in them, they're going to go a lot faster. There's no arguing that. And the thing is, if it's a 79, I don't know what it goes on for in California, but here in Texas, once they're more than 25 years old, they don't have emissions inspections. So you could put an LS engine in one and make it really a screamer. You don't have to worry about getting inspected for driving on the street for emissions. It's just safety, so you could easily do it without having to put all the anti-pollution equipment. That's why a lot of guys here in Texas will buy an older car and then soup it up, because it only has to meet the inspection stuff for the year it was made, 79, not for the year that the engine comes from. Alejandro Feliz Donis says, Scotty, please help me. My left turn signal keeps blinking fast on my '06 Mustang. First thing you want to do is put it in park, have it on, go outside. If you see the front or the back one isn't working, that's the problem. Replace the bulb. They're generally designed so if one of the bulb burns out and you turn it on, it'll blink too fast, and that's telling you, hey, one of the bulbs is burned out. Now, if you go out and you see that both bulbs are flashing, but they're flashing fast, but they're still both working, that means that your turn signal relay, we used to call it the turn signal flasher, now it's called the turn signal relay, it's the same part. That goes bad, and you go to any place like AutoZone, and they can sell you one and show you where it is, and you can replace the turn signal flasher. Zisan Minha says, give your views about Infiniti GS37s, its engine reliability and efficiency. Those are fun, sporty cars to drive around. That said, it's not a good idea to buy an older one with high mileage. I've had customers buy brand new ones, and we're happy for 8 or 10 years, 100-something thousand miles, didn't have hardly any trouble with the vehicle. But I've also had customers that would buy them used when they were 8, 10 years old, had 150,000 miles on them, and they bankrupted them. The transmissions went out, the electronics went out. They are fun to drive, but as they age, they can become endless money pits. See, the thing about Infinitis are just fancy Nissans, but the parts cost a ton more. I've had it where if a power steering hose goes out on a Nissan, I get the power steering hose from an aftermarket place like AutoZone for $50, not that much money. But with the Infinitis, a lot of times I have to go to the dealer because they have different size ones and nobody sells them but the dealer. And sometimes it was $300-something instead of $50. So a lot of their parts are expensive. I'm not a fan of them as they age. Alberto Hector says, what do you think about an MG Midget 75 and a Triumph TR7 1976? They were from your time. Thank you. My time, huh? Yeah, well, I was 20-something then. So the Midgets were they're little things, and some people like them. They were cute. They didn't have much horsepower, and in the 70s, mid-70s, it was the end of their lifespan, and they were pretty crappy cars then. The TR7 was a different type of design. It was the first real wedge-shaped car, and they were fun to drive around, but they had a lot of problems, overheating, blowing head gaskets. It was pretty much the end of the Triumph line, too. As a matter of fact, it's kind of funny, because it was the end of the Triumph cars and the Triumph motorcycles. Some guys like fixing them up and driving around. Neither of them will ever be worth any serious money because they weren't really serious sports cars. But you can pick them up used pretty cheap, and you can still get parts. If you want a weekend toy, it could be a fun thing to mess around with. Kevin Phillips says, Scotty, my '08 Crown Victoria has the engine and transmission cooler. Do they really help the engine and transmission last longer? It's a police car. Yes, they do. There's no arguing that. And of course, you might not have thought about it, but since it's a police car, the reason that they put those extra coolers on, because if you ever see the cops, they're at scenes all the time, and a lot of times they just leave the car sitting there idling, and yeah, transmissions, they can have a problem with overheating just idling. So with that extra cooler, that keeps them from having problems. That's one of the big reasons they do it, and they need the extra cooling. Of course, they do work. Edward Gaines says, Scotty, I got a 2001 Lexus ES300. It rattles sometimes when I press the accelerator. Okay, here's the thing. When you press the accelerator and it rattle, it usually means that either the timing is off. In that case, the timing belt might need to be changed. You can have a guy check it with a timing light to see if the timing's right or not. Or as cars age, the engine carbons up. And as carbon builds up inside the engine, the carbon takes up space. Since it takes up space in the combustion chamber, that increases the compression ratio because you have the same piston pressure going up, but it's going into a smaller space. And with a higher compression ratio, a lot of times the engine will rattle from lower octane gas. If that's the case, you might have a guy like me with a cleaning machine pressure clean the inside of the engine to get all the carbon out of it. We do that on older cars all the time.
So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.